Let's talk non-yarny summer crafts. Okay, so weather in the UK has reached the not super hot but hot enough and therefore muggy stage. But obviously we don't want to stop crafting. And we may find that working with wool, working with yarn is a little bit icky in the heat. And this knitting project I've got here is not so bad. This is my centre point popover that I'm working on. So that's in a Toki Tiku pattern, worked from the middle out. So it's an interesting construction to the point where I can't really show it in a sensible way until it's off the needles. So yeah, I'm working on this. This isn't too bad. It's a wool silk blend. So in terms of the feel on your hands during the summer, not too bad for hot weather. But still, there are going to be times where I don't want something as bulky as a jumper to be working on in the summer. I may not want to be working with yarn, so the sock projects may get put to a side at some point. So obviously, if I'm in an air-conditioned waiting room, socks are going to come out the handbag. That's a given. But yeah, some of the yarny projects just might not sort of grab your attention when it's hot for the feel in your hands. Obviously, a lot of people will be like, switch to cotton, do small projects with cotton yarn and summer yarns and hemp yarn and lace weight and the lighter fibres. Yeah, absolutely, do that. But in addition, I have yet to make a craft that I don't like. So I do like to have a variety of other options out there. So for instance, I am once again working on one of my long-standing whips. This is going to be a March top, but I'm doing some hand embroidery on it. So I need to do this on the other side, I need to mirror this, and then I can start hand seaming it, because this is going to be an entirely hand-sewn project, mostly to see if I can, because let's face it, I cut this out that long ago, I am probably a completely different size and shape. So we'll see what the fit is like when it's done. But I wanted to see if I could manage to sew up by hand an entire garment. So we're doing a top and it's in Rami, so it's a plant fibre, but it's a man-made fabric, man-made out of plant fibres rather than out of petroleum byproducts like polyester is. So it behaves a little bit like linen, doesn't soften up in the same way as linen does, but it's a similar sort of textile to linen, so good for the summer. I do have a shirt in this fabric already. This is the leftovers. So that's a couple of my options: socks, small projects, hand sewing, embroidery, that kind of thing. Now that's all stuff that you've seen me do before. You've seen me do cross stitch, you've seen me do embroidery, you've seen me do spinning and all that kind of thing. But like I say, I've yet to meet a craft I didn't like, so I've been pootling around Pinterest and I've put together a Pinterest board, which I will link down below. I've split it into sections, so you'll be able to see it in categories there when you go on to the Pinterest through the link to get more information about all of these projects I'm going to be talking about. There will be images flashing up against the blank wall behind me as I talk about things. So let's just go through in the order they present themselves to me on Pinterest. I'm obviously not going to talk about every single thing that's on the Pinterest board, but we will have a look at some examples. So the first thing on this, the first category that I've put together is coasters, placemats, etc. So sounds a little bit self-explanatory in a way. Coasters are great, they're small, they're portable, you can size them up to make placemats. I do also have one project that's listed as a napkin, hence the etc. But I suspect make quite a good placemat. So we've got coily string or yarn or hemp, or you could use old t-shirts done into like t-shirt yarn, or you can use bits of macrame cord, that kind of thing, in the same style as you do the rope bowls, the rope rugs, that kind of thing, to make coasters or mats. There's also a quick DIY macrame coaster using basic knots that I came across. I don't know how basic they are. I haven't done a great deal of macrame, and I also haven't looked at the instructions. We're going with Pinterest here. But they do look like an interesting textural appearance type coaster. There's also a weaving option that you could do with coasters, and of course that napkin, which is a lovely rainbow shaped napkin that I think would probably work just as well as a placemat. So that's my first little category of potential summer crafts, so you get the idea. They're not knitting, they're not crochet, they're not sewing, and they are preferably fairly portable projects that you can either take outside into the sun to do out there, or that you can use out inside in the garden in the sunshine. I mean, these would be great for a picnic or who takes placemats and coasters on a picnic? Barbecue in the garden, if you're trying to be a bit fancy with the in-laws coming over, that kind of thing. Or at your normal table, but you can work on them out in the garden and then bring them in and use them, or you can use them outside. That's what I'm thinking. So continuing with the outside in the garden, this idea is one that you could both do outside in the garden and use in the garden, and that is decorative plant pots. So this is quite a simple concept. See a couple of different examples here. Terracotta plant pots that have been painted. So you can put whatever design you wanted on. We've gone with the floral theme in the examples. I do like the shape of these ones. I don't often see terracotta pots in those shapes, so I like the idea of those. But nice for if you've got a small garden, large patio area, if you've got a balcony rather than an actual garden. And you could also use them for indoor plants as well. And obviously if you're using them for outdoor plants, just make sure that you're using an appropriate paint for staying out in the garden so that they have longevity. My next section is staying in the garden. We're going with beaded sun catchers and garden ornaments. Sun catchers I've come across before. Some of these are quite interesting ideas, like this watering can one. I like the idea of that. Or using sun catchers in windows, the sort of circular ones. I'm used to seeing that kind of thing. I thought seeing them as plant hangers was interesting. So that'd be a nice way to use your beads up. So if you use that glass beads or the clear plastic beads, so you can do the beading work outside in the garden, use it in the house or use it in the garden. But the one that really sort of grabbed my attention, the sort of concept that grabbed my attention, I've got a few examples here. Stakes for your plants with beads on. That's pretty pretty. Particularly if you're doing like a fairy themed corner of a garden with the kids or something, like sort of whimsy in the corner. They'd work really nicely there. Again, in plant pots, they'd work really nicely. And if you're somebody who's growing veg in the garden, you obviously need to know what it's supposed to be growing where. They don't necessarily stay where you've put them, in my experience. Plants seem to migrate a little bit. But having stakes with the plant's name on in the garden, so you know where you're looking for your harvest, is going to be really useful. So there's a couple of options there. There's one that's got a little space to put a card at the top, and then there's the one that is labelled already with the beads, using the letter dice-shaped beads to spell out the type of plant. So I thought they'd be really pretty, really interesting, and actually really practical as well. So a little bit of a whimsical practicality in the garden, I think, is never a bad thing. Sticking with a gardening theme, we're looking at flowers. Flowers and summer go hand in hand, as they do in spring. But there are many different ways that you can make flowers. You can use shop-bought buttons to create flowers. You can use beads to create flowers. You can use paper to create flowers. Dorset buttons and the European thread-wrapped button styles. They make really effective sort of floral-type displays. I also saw I think it's painting, but it could be printing project, where they've used the flowers and the leaves as a relief. So you're getting the negative of the flowers or the leaves in the colour of the paint or the dye or whatever they've used to create the background. I think this example is spray painted, but I have seen it done with turmeric and with light responsive dyes. So you put the dye on, and where the sun hits, it changes colour. So yeah, lots of options for flowery stuff. And of course, if we're thinking summer and using the outdoor spaces, we can't ignore the idea of bunting. So we have some very typical traditional bunting. You see it all over the place in the UK. So school fetes, church fetes, any celebration you can think of, the bunting comes out. So we have a nice classic example of bunting here, using a jute type fabric or hessian background with appliqued strawberries on. I thought that was really cute summer themed bunting. But my heart has to be with the most perfect garland for a child's summer birthday party or an end of term celebration. Ice cream cone garland. It's adorable. And it wouldn't actually take too long to make. We've got your standard yarn pom-pom there, which is obviously a little bit of yarn, but not a lot of yarn. And then the little shop bought ones on the top, with a cone at the bottom. I think it's gorgeous. I might need to borrow a small child to use that at some point. And something else you can use for those celebration events, or party events in the garden, lawn games. Weird lawn games at the wedding, because they were provided by the venue, and they weren't really popular. But here we've got a couple of examples of ones that people have made. So if you are somebody who does woodworking, or you know somebody who does woodworking, or you've been doing some DIY and have some offcuts left lying around, why not turn them into dominoes? Or if you've got huge chunks of wood, or you can get hold of huge chunks of wood, but dice. And if you can work out how to do a D20, you get all of the brownie points. I mean, you've won the game if you can do a D20 like this. So yeah, got party games, lawn games. These ones you could bring out year after year to encourage people to be out in the garden. Nice little talking point at a family gathering or a summer barbecue, that kind of thing. So yeah, lawn games. Obviously, given my recent dabbling into new crafts and what have you, I couldn't let the opportunity pass me by to suggest sewn bookbinding. So this is bookbinding that doesn't involve glue. The case-bound books that I've done, they involve glue on the spine, but sewn binding doesn't involve glue necessarily. I mean, if you're covering card to create your covers, you might be gluing stuff on there, but the actual structure of the book itself doesn't require glue. So you can take all of your constituent parts of your book into the garden, sew them together and create some rather decorative spined books. So we've got one with a floral stitch motif down the spine, and then we've got one that's using colour and pattern in its stitching to a decorative effect. So I may have to have a play around with where I position the holes for the stitching, because that's what you'd need to do for the patterns, to create the different shaped lines. You'd have to be thinking about where you're placing the holes to create the shapes and to have them line up how you want them to line up. The embroidered flowers one is it can't be that hard, but I think I need to look more closely at it. I think it might be woven stitches, so I think that the actual binding bit might be fairly straightforward, maybe a long stitch or a French link stitch or something, and then the embroidery I think might be sort of woven around the threads of the binding. Actually, yeah, it looks like a Coptic stitch with the embroidery woven around the stitches of the binding. So yeah, that could be fun to do in the garden. It would look great on a shelf. Thinking still stitching and embroidery. If you've got some old clothes that you want to give a bit of a revamp for the summer, why not embellish them with a bit of embroidery? So we've got an example here on some shorts and on a baseball cap. You can do it on jackets, you can do it on shirts. You can do it to cover up holes in things as well. Visible mending in embroidery form. So I thought that was a really sweet option. And you can obviously do it to coordinate with the wardrobe of the person whose garment you are embroidering onto. The next concept that I have, the next category of project type, is bookmarks. Who doesn't love an easy read when you're lounging on the beach, or if you're on a train or an airplane going on your holidays? You've got lots of time to kill. Who needs to be using scraps of paper and train tickets as their bookmarks? That's not something I've ever done. Honest. So bookmarks, really practical, great for gifts, quick and easy to make, relatively inexpensive, and you can go wild with creativity. So we've got crocheted bookmarks, we've got felt bookmarks, there's pressed flower bookmarks. Now that's just a few options. There really are all sorts of things that you can do. And these are things that you could do out in the garden. So the pressed flower one, that's Mod Podge and the flowers and a clear acrylic blank. The others, you can just take the constituent parts out, the materials out, and work on it in the sunshine. So nice and portable and practical as well. Thinking in terms of the pretty, sort of practical, in terms of you can actually use it, but pretty, decorative, easy to carry around and work on, good for gifts. Jewellery, beaded bracelets, earrings, necklaces, all that sort of stuff. You see what these typical friendship bracelets we all used to make at school and share out and hand out around to each other. You can always do the kumihimo style as well. So it's listed on Pinterest in the example that I found as cardboard loom bracelets. But that cardboard disc, that's a kumihimo loom. So yeah, that kind of thing. Beading's good, knotting's good, macrame's good. I do like these chicken themed earrings. I think Marcus will quite like those as well. But, maybe using them as something else, maybe not dangly earrings. I'm not sure how practical that would be in a dye studio. But yeah, rather cute. So yeah, jewellery, simple to do, easy to do in the garden. You can do it as a party activity if you've got kids that are into that sort of thing, or teenagers, that sort of stuff. And still thinking parties and entertaining and what have you. If you're doing an evening barbecue or a late afternoon barbecue for sort of dinner and you've got your guests staying for a few drinks under the moonlight, because obviously we do still get dark in the summer, it's just a bit later on. It'd be nice to have some lanterns or tea lights out onto the garden tables to create a bit of atmosphere. So we have a few examples here. We've got tea light holders made out of air drying clay. You'd have to work fairly quickly on them in the heat because obviously the warmer and drier the air is, the quicker the air drying clay is going to dry out. We've got paper lanterns. We've got these little flower-shaped tea light covers. I think they're made out of paper. So obviously you're going to be using battery-powered tea lights in those, which is probably a good idea anyway. And then little glass jars. They've been decorated with pressed flowers or beads or what have you to create a holder for a candle or a lantern or what have you. I did the similar one with when I was trying out things on the Cricut with the vinyl on the outside and the fairy lights inside. That kind of thing would look very effective on a garden table in the evening after a barbecue with a couple of glasses of Pimm's because we're British. It's going to be Pimm's for the summer. Come on. Okay, got 3 more categories to look at, so we are working our way through. My next category, there will be some yarn featured in the next category as we are looking at key rings. So there's a, I'm not sure if it's initial crochet, I think it's, yeah, that's crochet. So crochet key rings, these ones are actually available as a pattern on Etsy instantly if you're interested in making little daisy key rings. And then there's also the option of macrame key rings. So we've got these fishtail ones as a rather sweet example. Or you could do a crocheted bouquet of flowers and strawberries and mushrooms and things. And I've also seen some very sweet seashell key rings. So if you are somebody who gathers shells and pebbles and things, particularly ones that have little holes in already, so you don't have to create the holes yourself, you could string them together like you would with beads to create key rings. The only real expense there is going to be the actual findings themselves to turn it into a key ring. So relatively inexpensive as a project and practical, great for gifts. Easy to do outside in the sunshine, easy to do with friends, so you could all sit around and make a bunch of key rings and just swap them so that you've each got one that somebody else has made. That kind of thing. We're going to move on now to some more art-based project ideas. So we've got 2 categories in the art-based projects. The first one is wall hangings. I've put the DIY felt art in here because I didn't have another category to put it in. So yeah, very simple. Cut out your shapes in felt and stick them together. You could do this like the odd fuzzy felt pictures that you used to get as kids, and you could move things around and reposition them if you wanted to. Or you could glue them down and have them as a permanent piece of artwork. It's simple, effective, quite gentle to do in the sunshine. Or we could do some macrame wall hangings, like this lumpy sunflower. You've got all the wreath options as well, flowers. I like the idea of doing the wreaths on an old bike wheel. Obviously one that's not needed to be used on a bike, because that would be slightly impractical. But there's a whole plethora of wreaths and wall hangings and that kind of thing out there that you can get inspiration from, whether you're going for a beach scene or some sea life or something a bit more floral. So there's loads to pick from. A bit of seasonal decorating, always good. And my final section is something I haven't seen for quite a long time. Not that I've been looking for it, to be fair. My sister used to do a bit of this when we were kids, and that is string art. So I don't mean like your simple, just the outline stuff. I mean these detailed pins into a board, coloured bits of string, creating images all around the place. So I've got a few examples that'll be popping up on the screen. So it could be geometrics, you could be doing optical illusions, but there are some lovely designs like this hummingbird or the sunflower. So you can get really quite creative with string art. And again, it's going to be good to give as a gift. It's going to be good for decorating your own home, and you can do it outside should the weather permit. So obviously if you are heading into colder weather, these are projects you don't have to do outside. You could do them inside as well. So yeah, the link to the Pinterest board is in the description down below. And let me know in the comments if there are any of these project ideas, these concepts that spark your imagination. What might you be giving a try if the weather gets too sticky for you to be working with, you will. Or if you're somebody who just does general crafts but isn't really a knitter or crocheter or a spinner but just like enjoys my company anyway, that'd be great to find out what you'd want to do as well with these crafts. And like I say, I've yet to find a craft that I don't like. So it's going to be quite a hard choice for me if I need to find something that isn't sort of sewing machine or yarn related to do out in the lovely British summer. Should I need to, it will probably come down to what do I have the supplies for on hand, to be fair. So that will probably limit me quite a bit. But yeah, there's some ideas there for you to get you some inspiration going. I say let me know which ones have sparked your imagination. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. In the meantime, there is this one here that may be of interest to you, and I will see you soon. But until then, happy crafting and bye-bye for now.